Welcome to Ag Tech Talk by Agribusiness Global, where we explore the cutting-edge technologies and global crop protection industry. I'm your host, Lauren Milligan, content specialist for Agribusiness Global. Today, I am joined by Josh Colmer, who is the CEO and a co-founder of TraitSeq. We'll be exploring how artificial intelligence is transforming agriculture R&D, and we'll discuss how AI can unlock some insights from complex biological data and accelerate some discovery in crop protection, plant health, and the biologicals developments. Thanks, Josh, for your time and for joining me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
So I'll get started. And my first question is specifically related to AI. It's becoming a major tool in agriculture R&D. From your perspective, how is AI changing the way companies extract insights from complex biological data like genomics and metabolomics?
Yeah, the way that I see it, I think there are two simultaneous impacts happening. So first you have the purpose-built AI architectures. So these are the transformer models that are trained on biological sequence data that can do things like predicting protein structure, predicting gene function in ways that traditional statistics simply weren't able to do. And these unlock entirely new types of analysis. And then the second way, and this is the one that I'm most focused on at TraitSeq, is agentic AI. And so these are systems that can be carefully guided and tailored to perform quite complex analytical workflows, but they require very well-defined instructions and sufficient context. And what this means in practice is that you can have an AI system that takes your gene expression or metabolomic data and interprets them with the depth of someone who had read hundreds of research papers in that area. So it's able to connect your specific data analysis results with almost a full body of published research on those genes, metabolites, pathways on the internet. And so I suppose in conclusion, the thing that excites me most is that those two waves reinforce each other. So for example, like a well-known foundational model is AlphaFold, and that resolves protein structures. But that now there are emerging foundation models that do things like predicting gene regulatory function and other information that's highly relevant to the types of analysis that's done in R&D for biologicals. And then further, the underlying LLM models that are released by OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, they continue to improve in the benchmarks for agentic tasks, as well as like scientific reasoning. So all of those factors sort of compound together to change how we're approaching R&D in agri-tech.
So you mentioned some topics of data analysts, and we know that many companies are already generating huge amount of omics data. Can you tell us a little bit about why traditional analysis methods are often leaving valuable insights on the table? And also as a follow-up question, how can AI unlock more value from existing data sets?
Yeah, so my experience from talking to people in the industry who work at companies developing biologicals is that they might have generated omics data, or they're still generating omics data, but the bottleneck can be translating the results of their analysis into anything that actually drives a decision, whether that's how a product is positioned, which leads should be prioritized, or understanding why one candidate is better than another. I think there are a few bottlenecks. One is that there is a sort of shortage of people who have the expertise to analyze this sort of data. Another is that AI and these analytical methods are developing so quickly that it would be difficult for any single individual or even maybe a single team to stay right at the state of the art while being spread across a number of research projects. A major one, I think, is that the really critical annotation information, which describes what gene functions are, which pathways genes belong to, metabolite libraries, these are scattered across the internet in quite obscure academic repositories. So although there are some centralized resources, to get maximum value from your data, you really have to explore the wide range of the internet, and that's just not feasible for everyone to do. And then finally, it's just the time it takes to prepare the data, run the analysis, produce all of the figures, the tables to make sense of it, and then synthesize all that information into something that is actionable that can lead to a real R&D decision is just incredibly time consuming. So for an industry that has a duty to feed a growing population sustainably, there's just no excuse for sort of leaving any value on the table, particularly when we have such long R&D timelines. So AI can address some of those bottlenecks, and that sort of system is exactly what we're building at TraitSeq. So then to go on to your second question about how AI can shorten those timelines, I think there's two key areas. One is in the speed, which I'd mentioned that it can take weeks or months to do the sort of data preparation, analysis, then synthesis of all of the results into an actionable insight. Whereas if you have an agentic system that can handle each of those parts with very high quality, then you can compress that time down to a number of days. And then in terms of the depth, it can actually exceed what a researcher can do, because the AI can cross-reference your results with all of the literature and annotation information that's available on the internet in great detail. So in summary, the net effect is that companies can make better informed go, no go, or just in general research decisions faster in the R&D pipeline, which is where you would see cost savings from using AI.
That's really interesting. From your perspective, how much time do you think AI could realistically shave off the discovery process compared with traditional data analytic approaches?
Yeah, I think that it's quite hard to quantify, but I would say that from our experience, looking at the difference between people in our team analyzing data by themselves, sort of manually writing their own code, analyzing the data, producing figures, doing the whole process, compared to having an agentic system do it, I think you are looking at sort of a 5 to 10 times productivity increase for those bioinformaticians or researchers, because they have a tool that they still need to operate. It's not a complete replacement. It just becomes a tool that they can use to analyze data much more efficiently and in more depth, which gives them more time to then connect the AI's interpretation with the need of the business, or the more commercially pressing point about how to position a product, or what does this information mean for the company that we're working with. So it's hard to answer your question directly, but I would say that having tools like this gives a sort of 5x, 10x efficiency improvement to people in R&D.
Sure. Well, that's still a significant improvement too. That's pretty helpful for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of the most difficult challenges in plant science that we've seen is connecting data across different biological systems. Can you tell us a little bit about how AI can help researchers link genes, metabolites, phenotypes, and different environmental factors to kind of better understand plant performance?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something I can speak to personally because, for example, my PhD focused on transcriptomics, so gene expression data. And so I went through undergraduate, PhD, only working with gene expression and phenotype data, which meant that I didn't have a sort of multi-omics understanding of how, if we saw one genetic pathway that was enriched, how that might link with specific metabolites simultaneously. And I think very few people have had the experience and have the expertise to effectively link together multi-omics data. But because of the way that AI has been trained and can be harnessed, it is positioned as a solution here because it's able to synthesize knowledge across the different omics data type domains at a scale that no individual could. So it could identify that, yeah, this enriched genetic pathway has known connections to this set of metabolites you're seeing, and then contextualize all of that within the framework of your research question, an area of plant physiology, I suppose. So it's really important in biologicals because you have different types of treatments. So you can have microbials, peptide-based treatments, or other ones, and they each affect the plant's molecular biology differently through different mechanisms. So being able to have an AI tool that can support the characterization of the effects of biological treatments just sort of levels up our ability specifically to understand mode of action, which I'm sure, as you know, is one of the hardest and most valuable questions in the space.
Certainly. Can we touch a bit on the concept of agentic AI in R&D? I'm curious as to what that means in practical terms and how autonomous analysis systems could accelerate discovery in terms of the crop protection, biologicals, or plant health sectors.
Yeah, so agentic AI basically means a system that doesn't just sort of answer a question like ChatGPT where it's back and forth. Instead, it is an AI that can autonomously execute a complex multi-step workflow and potentially has a number of tools that it's able to access and use to make decisions. So at TraitSeq, we've built an agentic bioinformatics platform that basically takes a research question like, what effect does this biological treatment have on the leaves of this plant, some context about the experiment that's being done, and then the raw omics data, and then translates that into a tailored analysis pipeline specific to your research question. The system will identify what sort of analysis it should do to answer your question. It will then execute it, generate the results, and then this is where you have another agent comb through all of those results, identify the interesting patterns, cross-reference it with existing publications, and come up with, based on all of the available data, what it thinks the most likely answer to that research question is. And this is an incredibly powerful tool because it can both, as I was saying earlier, reduce the time to make R&D decisions, but also provide a more holistic interpretation of all of your results. And it basically go at the level of depth that would take a researcher weeks or months, and potentially, you basing on the system that we have, do that sort of thing in just a number of days. And it is really, the output is really structured around the specific R&D questions that a company might have for that data set.
Are you hearing any kind of feedback about hurdles in relation to this adoption? Is it related to the technology itself, or are companies you're hearing from concerned about building trust among scientists to rely on maybe AI-driven insights?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point to bring up. I'd say that there are two main things from my experience. One is in the risk of there being like hallucinations where the model fabricates something that is not true. It leaps to a conclusion, or it just makes up some data that doesn't exist. And that is why I mentioned before, it's still very important for there to be people using these tools and not for these tools to be completely independent. And that is something, I mean, it's based on our experience, the hallucination rate is really quite low, provided you're using your own validated bioinformatics pipeline. The other one, I think, would be the AI models that are being used to investigate and probe these data sets, making sure that they are not models that can learn off that data, that Google can basically learn from all of the analysis that TraitSeq's doing. That's not something we want to happen. So in order to get over that hurdle, there are open source models that perform very similarly to the state of the art models that released by OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, but they're closed. So no learning is going back to another company based on the use of that model.
We're hearing a lot of that too with every conversation I have on these podcasts. A lot of people are saying these AI tools are just that. They're great tools, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you need someone on the ground kind of monitoring them and working closely with them. So for companies developing biological products, how could AI-powered analysis help shorten R&D timelines and improve the odds of identifying effective solutions? And I know we kind of touched up on this a bit, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that question?
Yeah, I don't think there's too much more to add. I think I would just say that I just think that now is a really exciting time because the cost of omics continues to come down. So it's become a more accessible technology, and lots of the R&D questions that exist in the biological space are omics adjacent, or they need to be answered using omics. And considering back to when I was generating omics data during my PhD, sort of 5 years ago, we didn't have these sorts of tools that can really enhance the interpretation of the patterns that we're seeing so strongly and make sense of them and connect them to decisions that a company might make. So I would just say that now is a really exciting time to generate omics data and then connect the analysis of that omics data and the interpretation of the results with AI systems that are able to make use of all of the decades of research that has been done across transcriptomics, metabolomics, genetic pathways, agronomy, phenotype work. So yeah, nothing really to add. It's just that AI, I think, can both shorten the R&D timeline, the time to make a decision, and also enhance the information that is used to make decisions because it has that more holistic, detailed interpretation of the results.
I am curious, do you see AI making a biggest, most impactful difference at a certain point in the R&D pipeline? That could mean early discovery, it could mean candidate search screening, or maybe later stage product development, or is it just kind of depending on the circumstance?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm probably too laser focused on like mode of action, and once you've got down to a few leads, really characterizing those leads and understanding how they work, so that you can better position those in the market. So that is immediately where I think there is a huge amount of value of using AI in terms of discovery. Perhaps the purpose-built transformer models that I was talking about at the very beginning could be used to predict the effects of microbials or other types of biologicals before even doing any sort of testing in the lab. And then I think quite a separate sort of use of AI would be potentially for compiling like registration information. So I know on the previous time I came on the podcast, I think it was a roundtable, there was this discussion about there's a huge bottleneck in companies wanting to register their products, but then there being a huge backlog because it takes so long. It's just assuming quite an inefficient system. So if AI can help with both compiling the documents needed for registration and then also verifying and informing the decisions that are made based on those registration packages, then potentially that could be a very impactful outcome, because that would then mean that more products get put into the hands of growers, which is ultimately what we want to see.
I'm glad you brought that up. I believe the first time you came on the podcast, TraitSeq had just recently partnered with Syngenta, correct? On moving forward some biological, or was it biostimulant updates?
Yeah, biostimulants indeed. Yeah,
Yes. Wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation.
absolutely. Yeah, recommend going back and listening to that.
Definitely. Looking ahead, on average, I'd say in the next 5 years, what are you personally most excited about in terms of the role AI could play in the future of ag innovation? I'm thinking particularly in the terms of plant health, crop protection, and biological development.
Yeah, I think it would touch on my answer to the last question, which is all of these different areas of where AI could be applied being adopted in an effective way. So it would mean that at each stage of the R&D pipeline, AI is being used effectively to better screen which candidates get from lab to glasshouse. When you get to glasshouse or early field trialing, better characterizing the effects of biologicals. And then once a company has confidence in a biological and has done sufficient testing, when they send off the registration documents, perhaps AI is being used to make that whole process of registering a new product more efficient. And then I suppose just personally, I get very excited when new models drop every couple of months and you see slightly better performances in agentic tasks, coding tasks, scientific reasoning, because the improvements in those foundational models that everyone is using should just accelerate research that's done across academia, in industry, because researchers are able to just work more effectively. They're able to code faster, interpret their data more effectively. So I'm just excited to see sort of acceleration that can come in R&D from the adoption of AI.
Well, thank you, Josh, so much for your time. I appreciate you joining us again.
My pleasure. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to Ag Tech Talk by Agribusiness Global. Stay connected with the latest in ag tech and crop protection by following us on LinkedIn and visiting agribusinessglobal.com for more insights and updates. Until next time.